right now, and we'll get started. So again, hello everyone, I'm Jamila, and I will be the staff facilitator for this room. So before we get started, I do just want to go over some general housekeeping. First and foremost, each of our speakers are going to present briefly, and then we're going to open up the conversation. When we open up the conversation, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function or raise your hand to come off mute. And then also just want to remind everyone, this is a conversation. So we encourage you to speak directly with these amazing speakers we have here today. And when you are not speaking, please stay on mute just so that we can hear the conversation going on. And with that said, I am so excited to introduce our breakout room speakers. So first we have Nyanza Shaw. She is the Executive Vice President, Scripted Business and Legal Affairs for Fremantle North America. Nyanza Shaw is a renowned film, television, music, and media lawyer with over 25 years of experience. Ms. Shaw currently serves as Executive Vice President, Scripted Business and Legal Affairs for FremantleMedia North America. In this role, she oversees all deal-making pertaining to the development, production, and financing of Fremantle scripted series and new media content produced for the U.S. She received her BA from Knowles College in Oakland, California, and her JD from UC Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco, California. Our next speaker is Deputy City Attorney Phil Lamb. Phil Lamb served as the first intellectual property counsel for the city of Los Angeles and founding the first governmental intellectual property IP law practice in North America. He developed the city's IP asset management program and IP licensing practice. Bill graduated with honors from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles Evening Program, and with distinctions from the University of Illinois' Masters of Science, Bachelor of Engineering. Before becoming an attorney, he was an engineering manager at Fortune 100 companies in the energy and aviation industries.
Yes. Is this breakout room number 1, please?
Yes, it is.
And you were just introduced, so you came in right on time.
Yes. And we have one more speaker to introduce. So sorry about my dog. Our final speaker is Yvonne Mendiro. I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. At BESTEC. Yvonne Garcia Mendiro is an attorney with Tzedek Legal Services Employment Rights Project, where she represents low-wage and immigrant workers. Her practice currently focuses on wage theft, discrimination, and retaliation. Yvonne also engages in policy work that has resulted in improved working conditions for all Angelenos. Yvonne graduated from Loyola Marymount University in 2007 and from Southwestern Law in 2012. With that, introductions aside, I will now pass it along to our speakers. Ms. Shaw, would you like to begin?
Sure. Am I just talking a lot? I thought we were going to go through the questions. So I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do an intro or if we wanted to start going through some of the questions that were sent out.
Yeah, I think we're just going to do brief intros. If there's anything you want to share with the audience, we'd love to hear it.
Not in particular. I'm very happy to be here and I'm very happy to answer any questions that anybody has about their journey to law school. I took a generally traditional path, but I did also take a year off. And I know someone had asked about a gap year. I did take a year off between undergrad and law school. And so I can definitely speak to that. But I mean, for me, again, I'm just excited to be here and share information and hopefully inspire other folks and get rid of some of the stress and fear and apprehension that some people have about law school. Because I think when you see us and talk to us, you can see all of the possibilities that are out there because we all do so many different amazing things. So again, I'm just happy to be here and answer any questions and share any information I can.
Thank you. And now we'll pass it over to Attorney Phil Lamb, if you want to talk about your experience.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I've been kicked out 3 times, so I'm not touching anything. Hi all, especially Ms. Shaw. My experience about how to get there, because a bunch of questions. I missed your question.
Yeah, of course. So just kind of your experience getting into law school, and yeah, just your journey to that.
Okay, so first question. I was a full-time double degree engineer for the defense industry at Boeing in Long Beach, which paid me to finance my law school at night. So I went to Loyola evening for 4 years. And so that's basically how it goes. I always wanted to go to law school just for the sake of it. I mean, for the public affairs and the service element. But because I went to engineering and had a very good career for 7 years, I did not feel like it was not worth it money wise and giving up my career to go to law school, if you will. Then I realized that I can do intellectual property, combining my engineering and law, and also the fact that someone's paying for it. Why not, right? It was tough, but I totally enjoyed it, and I don't have I have no regret at all.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And we will pass it over to Yvonne.
I'm
Hi.
sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
passing it over to me. Oh. Hi, my name is Yvonne Medrano, and I am an attorney with Tzedek Legal Services, and we are a nonprofit here in Los Angeles, and I'm with the Employment Rights Project, which I'm very, very proud to say we're the only legal service provider nonprofit that can assist undocumented workers. So that's that's what we primarily do. And I just like put it out there right away, like for like the hardest part till this day of my legal career has been the LSAT. And I just like a big push for all of you, like, do not let that stop you. It is a ridiculous test. I think it's a test of resources personally, like people that, have how people that don't have to work, people that have, can pay for the classes and pay for the tutors. That's who you're competing against sometimes. So, and no hate on them. Like, I wish I had that, but that's my big, hopefully your takeaway is do not let the LSAT stop you. And there's going to be a change in the LSAT in August of next year. They're going to get rid of the game section. So I want to put that out there. So if you all are really good at the games, take the LSAT before August. If you don't want the games, give it a minute and do it later on. The games are the games are dumb. People like them and think they're fun. I don't know how they test your ability to go to law school, but just want to put that out there because that I saw that LSAT stop so many of my friends that are incredibly smart and would have been amazing attorneys, but it's such a ridiculous test. So my big push is do not let that stop you. And then on loans, I've been practicing for over 10 years now. Did government and nonprofit. I started with 100,000 in loans. Southwestern gave me a half scholarship, which was amazing. I ended with 220 because of interest. And it got wiped out last year because through the public service loan forgiveness program. So another barrier that, if you're interested in government or nonprofit, the loans should not be a barrier. And it's written in your loan documents usually that, that program is available. So I think, I think once it's in your loan documents, it's pretty secure that you should be able to apply in 10 years. So those are my big two plugs.
Let me address that, Jamila. I think it's interesting because I do agree that there are definitely certain demographic barriers in terms of the LSAT, but I also taught LSAT prep for about 5 years. And so I try and encourage people to understand that, to Yvonne's point, it's a very specific test that tests very specific things. And it's not necessarily, part of the frustration is it's not necessarily directly applicable to what you're going to be studying in law school. Like you're not going to law school to study games, to Yvonne's point. But the challenge of becoming a lawyer, and especially for folks from underrepresented areas, et cetera, is that this is part of, the hurdles that they have you jump through, right? So they want you to take the LSAT, you have to go to law school, you're taking the bar, and in all of those instances, even the financial piece, right, is that you have to approach it in a way that if this is something that you want to do, whether it's starting here and getting information, but utilizing all the resources that you can and never letting that get you frustrated to the point that it does take you away from your objective, from your goal, from your dream, from your passion to become a lawyer. It is possible. Yes, they make it difficult, but it isn't impossible. We're all here because it's possible. And so it's just approaching each thing. And a lot of it is psychological. I mean, I talked to, again, a lot of folks in undergrad that are getting ready for the LSAT. And you have to kind of get it out of your head that it is this huge thing, right? Because that's kind of where most of the pressure comes. And then I have those same conversations with law students when they're like, oh my God, the bar, the bar. If you make it as bigger than it is, it does feel like a much loftier task. And so part of it is that confidence. Part of it is approaching it for what it is. Part of it is understanding that it is a test for a test, and changing the mindset of how you're approaching things. Again, whether you can afford school, whether you can get past this test, all of those things. Not saying that any of them are easy, but if you can get into the mindset of being very positive about the fact that this is something that you want to do, and so you're going to really push through and do the things that you need to do to get past them, then I encourage you to do that.
Thank you. And now on to our next question. I know Phil answered this somewhat, so our other two panelists would like to add. What did your path to law school look like? Did you decide to take a gap year, or did you always know that you were interested in attending law school?
I always knew that I wanted to go to law school. I was kind of like nerdy that way. I knew since I was like 9 that I wanted to be a lawyer. One of the things that I was chuckling at earlier that Ms. Maddox shared was this idea of like asking about people. So when I was getting ready to go to law school, I had a friend who was a few years older than me who was in law school, and he was actually at UC Hastings. And I pretty much did drive him crazy because I was like, well, what class are you taking? What professor are you taking? What should I be doing? But it was, to Cree's point, to this day, we're still friends. And he's like, I just love that you did all those things, but in 2 years you were in law school. Like, it wasn't like you were just asking me. And then, he's like, you're one of those people that actually followed through on it. And so again, whether it's starting here or wherever you can start, I don't think it's never too early to start preparing if it's something that you want to do. And then I chose to take a gap year specifically for me. There were some family things going on, and also I have an aunt who's now retired, but she was a legal assistant at a big law firm in San Francisco where I grew up. And so she got me a job. And it was very intentional for me to be able to work at a law firm during that year between undergrad and law school and learn about how law firms work and learn about what lawyers do and learn about, and same thing. I talked to partners, I talked to associates. At that time, they had separate like calendar clerks and legal clerks, and just kind of getting an understanding of how things worked. And you can do that in many ways. I don't think you need to necessarily take a gap year, but all the volunteer things. I know Yvonne's amazing organization always needs volunteers and are happy to like bring people in to help do administrative things and talk to folks and all of the whatever opportunities that you can take on to learn about what you're interested in. As I mentioned, and just learning even from the three of us, we all do 3 completely different things. So if you don't know what type of law that you want to go into, or even if you do, get experience there, because I know a lot of people who did that and then volunteered and then realized they wanted to do something else or going to a different area. So I think it's a matter of, again, once you're getting into this interest, getting as much information as possible, talking to people. Annette also mentioned, reach out to people on LinkedIn and say, hey, I know that you do this. I'd love to hear more about what you do. And, and people will engage with you.
Thank you. And Yvonne, if you have anything to add.
So I took 2 years off. After college, I did a postgraduate service program, which I highly recommend to everybody. I know like AmeriCorps and Peace Corps are really known. I did an AmeriCorps program through the Episcopal Church. I think it's called Episcopalian Volunteer Corps now. Not Episcopalian, but they were great. Big fan of the Episcopalians. And I lived in New York for a year, worked at Planned Parenthood, lived in community. It was a great growing experience. Highly, highly recommend it. And then after that, I worked at UCLA. Because I didn't do well in the LSAT the first year, so I retook it. And that was all. I'm glad I took those 2 years because I just needed to grow up a little bit before I went to law school. And then I studied for the LSAT during those 2 years while working, and I think I took the LSAT, the blue book. No, not. I forgot the LSAT classes. I took it 3 times. So I wasn't gonna let that damn test stop me. And thank you, Azar, for supplementing all that. That's 1,000% correct. And everything you said is that mentality is what got me through. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and then I applied to law school, and it was also like I think my LSAT, I forgot. I think it may have been like I did not do that well. I think I got like a 154 the first time, and then the second time I did worse. I was like, but again, I was like, this isn't gonna stop me. I'll figure out a way, and here I am. So I'll pass it on. I don't know, Phil. Yeah.
Oh, just one thing about LSAT, a lot of students didn't know. And actually my nephew found out. He did a lot of research. He was determined to go to law school for free, and he did. And he said you can cancel the LSAT score after you've taken it. If you don't, within a certain period of time, you don't feel confident or whatever. So just want to make sure that you know the rules of the game, so you can play the game well, and that is very important. And you can take it again and again, but again, you got to know how the school would use the past scores also. And from what I understand, in terms of law school admissions, so far the 2 biggest objective numbers they use are the LSAT and the GPA. So like my nephew's GPA was okay, was good, but was not like 3.9 or 4, and being in a certain ethnic group that really worked against him. And so he needed to do the LSAT very, very well. And the trick to do it is you just practice, and practice. And that really can improve your score. And the last thing is, if you can somehow finance some organization or bar association might be able to finance a prep course, there are a couple prep courses that are very good. They actually they do improve your score. So kind of consider that. It might be well worth to spend it 1,000, 2,000 if you have to self-finance or borrow money. If you think that is the difference it's going to make. And then in addition to that is the personal statement. That is very, very important these days, especially after the UNC Harvard Law School a case where the Supreme Court says you may not use race based or race conscious factor for higher education admissions. And so, but be that as it may, you can still talk about your experiences, which incorporate everyone's diversity, everyone's experiences in your personal statement. Anyhow, that's what I'm gonna say in there. I know the law schools, whatever they call it, I forgot the law school admission council. They are making it race blind, so to speak, a lot of things. But I think the personal statement is going to be more important after the Harvard case.
And I just want to check in to see if the audience has any questions. All right. I have another question for our panelists that I will send to the chat as well as ask. So my question is, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before enrolling in law school, what would that be? And we can start with Ms. Shaw.
I think it does go back to getting as much information and understanding of what that process would be. And also taking some time to really, to Yvonne's point, if you're in this space, understanding like you're now going into law school, it is time intensive and can be challenging. Is there a time that you want to take off, or is there something that you can do? For example, when I was in law school, I looked into doing a summer abroad. I wanted to do one in undergrad and wasn't able to. And because by second year, I kind of knew, well, I knew what I wanted to do before I went to law school, and I'm in entertainment and business. But the second year, I actually did a summer abroad in Italy, and all the other law students were like, "Oh, we're gonna go get clerkships," and I was like, "I don't want to be a litigation attorney. I don't want to be in court." I was like, "I'm doing transactional work." So I think again, thinking about resources, financial resources, and then also different types of projects that can help support you while you're in law school, and you can do that research before you get there.
Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Phil.
I mean, everyone's journey is a little unique. I hated reading, and as it turned out, I actually have a reading disability. And I always thought, and
I was going to say, how is that possible, Phil? But I forgot. You're an engineer. You came from the engineer side.
but I hate reading. Right, exactly. And I remember when I was a kid, my mom was like, I was in Hong Kong. I was raised in Hong Kong. English is my second language. And my mom goes like, "Why are you not reading?" I said, "Reading makes my brain hurt." And I just could not read. So I went to engineering because of that. And then actually law school helped me a lot in a funny way that I do speed reading and I can pick up things a lot better. Otherwise, if I read regularly, I have a roadblock. I literally have a wall at a certain, and you can kind of, there are other things, part of my muscular stuttering, you can tell too. But be that as it may, the reading for my journey, especially those who have reading disability or science background who don't tend to read, my advice is that you read more philosophy books. Or the two data points for you. A lot of data points. I'm old. The LSAT, the one undergrad discipline that consistently scored the highest on LSAT is philosophy majors, because they read a lot and they do a lot of the logics in arguments. And actually, my nephew took the advice, and when he transferred, he minored in that also philosophy, and that helped him a lot in reading, because he had to read more and he had to do more logical arguments in his brain, in his mind. So those two really help a lot for the science-based people or people who did not read as much or hate reading. So that would be one piece, but generally, it's a lot of good advice. I mean, previously, and everyone has talked about finding a good mentor, i.e., people that who can kind of coach you through the pitfalls, and especially law students, recent law students. My nephew was mentored by one of my law clerks, former law clerks, and they become really good friends. And so because the former law clerk is a more recent law student than I was 29 years ago. So I think that really helps a lot of people who've gone through it. And then in terms of admission, there talk to the admission people. There are times that you can actually make friends with admission officers, and believe me, they would take an appointment. They would take an informational interview. They would talk to you. Now, but be careful when you talk to them. They are kind of seeing you too. You're kind of getting an interview from them extra. So be careful. Just how you can perform, if you will. But get information from the office, from the admissions office. And there are programs like, for example, USC, which I'm very close to, that's a first gen program. A lot of people don't know it's a first generation law. So basically, it's for people who family, the candidate is the first generation law student or even college student from the family. And once you're admitted to the pipeline, you almost are guaranteed to be admitted to USC Law School. But of course, they shepherd you and mentor you. So find out all the little things, pipe into it. When I was at the LA County Bar Association, we did a lot of pipeline program, and I think that's how I knew Ms. Shaw, and I ran to Nicole also and others. So there are many law, not just law school, but bar association that had pipeline programs that you can really take advantage of.
I was going to mention too, in terms of the LSAT, there are definitely expensive prep courses that you can take, but there are also, like LA City College has a course. There are very inexpensive courses. There are free courses online. Again, it's about getting the resources and doing the research, but there are other opportunities for you to kind of get in that space. And then kind of echoing what Phil is saying, there are definitely bar associations that may either sponsor you or they'll give you, you can apply for an LSAT prep grant or things like that. So that's another resource that you can look into.
And one thing is, it's like a bar exam. Anything is, I think, what someone mentioned before, don't let any test psych you out. You have to be confident. You have to be telling yourself, I'm going to pass it. I'm going to do what I want, what I did. I mean, for one, I did not deserve to pass the bar the first time because I was not studying. And then, I mean, LSAT, I didn't prep for it because I just took it for fun with my buddy. And then later my Boeing would pay for it. And so I had no pressure, if you will, from the LSAT. But if you've done your work, the psychology, your confidence is worth more than anything else.
Thank you. Passing it over to Yvonne if you have anything to add.
So this is the advice I would give myself, not giving it to you all, but I would tell myself to like shut up and put your head down and do work, like with the LSAT. Like I think going to everyone else's point, right? Like the whole psyching yourself out. Like I felt ready for the bar. At the time I took the bar, I was like, I am done. There's nothing else I can do. I did everything I could. I didn't feel that way for the LSAT. And that's partly because I didn't know how to study, right? And the other part was like the intimidation factor. And I wish I would have just been like, just zip it, put your head down, do the work, do the practice test. I know it's hard. And like the growth was so small and like so incremental, but that's the way it was going to be for me. And I wish I would have accepted it. Like just every Saturday, pretend, take a practice test, similar conditions, and just like do the work. And that's, something I still have to tell myself now, but then I wish I would have accepted that a little more.
What is interesting is I used to tell my students that, Yvonne, because I do, which I mentioned earlier, I think LSAT is very different than law school, and law school is different than the bar, and bar is definitely different than practicing, right? But all of them have that in common. You literally just have to do the work. That's the lawyer mantra motto. Like you have to do the work. There's no shortcuts. There's no like other way to get around it. And then a lot of it, the underlining of that is the confidence, the psychology of it, and all of that. And so going into it, yeah, that is the advice I gave myself. That's the advice I share with other people, is that, you have to be prepared, you have to do the work. And then lean into that. If you have done the work, that's where your confidence comes from.
Thank you. And then our final question, what has your career path been after law school, and is it what you expected? And anyone who's ready to go, feel free.
What was that last part?
What has your career path been after law school, and is it what you expected?
I can go. Mine is as I expected. I think since I was a kid, I wanted to do workers' rights. I grew up doing that for my parents and translating and asking for raises on their behalf, because I speak English and my parents don't. So I was like, I could do this. I've been doing this forever. And that's exactly what I did. So after law school, I took an non-traditional job. I was a legal organizer for the Clean Car Wash campaign, which is now the Clean Car Wash Worker Center. I was the first attorney there. They were looking for a legal organizer, not an attorney, but the pay was the same as the ACLU starting pay. So I was like, I'll do it. And a lot of people mentioned like maybe you shouldn't do that, but I did it. I turned it into an attorney position once I passed the bar. Loved it. And then I decided to have a family, and I'm like, well, I can't, like, nonprofit pay is kind of tough when you have daycare for two. So I went to the state, to the Department of Industrial Relations. Great place to raise a family. Very 9 to 5. And then after full disclosure, like my husband and I kind of like we balance each other out, right? Like I think it was really good to have his support. And then so I was able to like take a pay cut and come back to nonprofit at Tzedek, and this is my dream job. And I'm very, very lucky to be able to say that, especially because you hear so many attorneys like complain or like say like, don't go to law school, like don't do it. Do it. It's amazing. There's so much potential, and that's been my trajectory.
Thank you. And Phil, I'll pass it to you. Or
Bill,
Ms.
did
Shaw,
you
if
want to
you're ready.
answer?
Yeah. Or Ms. Shaw, if you're ready.
I need go ahead. I just need to unmute it. Yes or no. The unexpected part was I was thinking I was going to go into corporate law, big law, and an offer from Jones Day and do patent litigation, combining my engineering and law, both of which I loved. And by the way, I was probably the only one. Yeah, I think I was the only one out of about 90 law students in the evening class that loved law school, and everyone hated me. But they hated me more when they found out that I didn't have to pay for law school. The no part is that I never gone back to big law. I came to the city attorney's office, became a prosecutor for 1 year to pick up my trial experience before going back to do trials. But I loved it so much, and also without a student loan that that gives me a lot of options. And then I realized who weren't at the time. It's like I didn't want to. Who wants to go to big law? They're sweatshops, and it was. I mean, it's like, and I had the options. Like I'm enjoying what I did, and so that was unexpected. However, was expected was not expected was that I actually created a corporate law within the city attorney's office by opening the intellectual property law practice, and became the first IP counsel for a municipality in North America, and so I served my client very well. What's expected was the public service element, which I always liked. And so I love my job, and I would not leave because even though the money is great outside and whatnot, it just it just does not, the outside does not have the public service element, and I can effectuate and make some impact. So that is the part that was expected. But life is full of expectation of surprises. It probably won't work out the way that you think you plan, but it's okay. You just take every turn unexpected. Just take it, and then and you will reinvent yourself, and just make sure you pursue health and happiness. There's no money that's worth your health or happiness. If you're not happy with the job, like what Yvonne was saying, she's so happy where she is after the state. There are different journeys, different time stage, in her life. And she shared with us how happy she is with that. So there's no money that's worth your happiness or health. Believe me, I every year I have friends in law firm who dangle the big money over. And I said, you know what? Yeah, I do it. I may have less hair and a bigger gut. And I have many high stress friends, including executives in the city who got cancer. And partly because of the stress. And the two types of stress. One is the manageable stress you can control. One is the one you cannot control. I have no problem managing the stress I can control. So that is really the bottom line. Just be happy and be healthy.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And it does look like we are getting ready to change breakout room. So I want to thank our panelists for their amazing insight, and also to all of you in the audience. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to get in contact. And again, thank you all for being here, and we will switch to another session shortly.
Jamila, we stay here though, right?
Yes,
And then
yeah.
okay. Like we're not switching. Okay.
No,
Everybody
no.
else switches, and new group will come in once it comes to come. Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you guys. Good luck with everything, everyone. And definitely, yeah, if you guys have extra questions, put them in the chat.
I have a question. I'm going to say it because I'm typing too slow, but I just wanted to know if anyone can answer, because I'm in the transition period, like waiting on bar results. I want to know, what did you do to invest in yourself to make sure you're successful in your current career?
Oh, lots of things. I think that part of continuing to learn is always important. And I do that in two ways. One is to, obviously we have CLE stuff, but in my practice area, I make sure and go to different lectures, talk to different people, get information. I know Lynette also talked about that, and then also talking to other colleagues about things that are happening in the industry. And then on top of that, again, getting involved in organizations, professional organizations. I think that it's good to get involved in a professional organization that might be a legal organization, but then also a professional organization that is relative to the practice area that you want to be in.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I think Jamila's coming back to facilitate. I hope.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I thought my camera was on this whole time. I was talking. Sorry about that, everyone. Welcome to our breakout room. This is breakout room number 1. How I made it, journeys to and from law school. We're so thrilled to have our amazing panelists here. So without further ado, we're going to get started. My name is Jamila, and I will be the facilitator for this room. Before we get into the conversation, just want to go over some general housekeeping. So each of our speakers are going to present briefly on their journeys to law school, and then we'll open up the conversation. When we open up the conversation, I do ask if you have any questions to please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. And again, this is a conversation, so feel free to speak directly and to come off mute and turn your camera on if you feel comfortable to do so. And when you are not speaking, please stay on mute so that everyone can hear this conversation. And for our panelists, when we're getting close to time, I will send a clock emoji to the chat as well as use it on my screen so you'll see it as a reaction. And so I'm so excited to introduce our wonderful panelists. First off, we have Nyanza Shaw. She's the Executive Vice President of Scripted Business and Legal Affairs with FremantleMedia North America. Nyanza Shaw is a renowned film, television, music, and media lawyer with over 25 years of experience. She currently serves as Executive Vice President, Scripted Business and Legal Affairs for FremantleMedia North America. In this role, Nyanza oversees all deal making pertaining to the development, production, and financing of Fremantle scripted series and new media content produced for the U.S. She received her BA from Knowles College in Oakland, California, and her JD from UC Hastings College of the Law in San Francisco, California. Our next speaker is Deputy City Attorney Phil Lamb. Phil Lamb serves as the first intellectual property counsel for the city of Los Angeles and founding the first governmental intellectual property IP law practice in North America. He developed the city's IP asset management program and, sorry, I had to make sure I'm recording, and IP licensing practice. Phil graduated with honors from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles Evening Program, and with distinctions from the University of Illinois, Masters of Science and a Bachelor's of Science and Engineering. Before becoming an attorney, he was an engineering manager at Fortune 100 companies in the energy and aviation industries. And our final speaker is Yvonne Mediano. She is an attorney with Tzedek Legal Services Employment Rights Project, where she represents low-wage and immigrant workers. Her practice currently focuses on wage theft, discrimination, and retaliation. Yvonne also engages in policy work that has resulted in improved working conditions for all Angelenos. She graduated from Loyola Marymount University in 2007 and from Southwestern Law School in 2012. And so to kick off our conversation, our first question for the panelists is, can you explain what your path to law school was like? If you took any gap years, if you studied abroad, any of that information is really helpful. And we'll start it off with Ms. Shaw.
Hi, everybody. So I knew I wanted to be a lawyer from a very young age, and so I was pretty much on that path. I grew up in the Bay Area, so I went to college in the Bay Area, and then I did take a year off in between undergrad and law school, actually to work at a law firm. I had an aunt who's now retired, who was a legal assistant, who helped get me a clerk job at a law firm. And it was really so I could go in and learn about how law firms worked and what lawyers did and all that. I mean, I had an idea, but more practically wanted to understand that piece of it. And I also knew that at some point I wanted to have my own practice. Before working at Fremantle, I had my own practice for about 20 years. And so that was also part of it. And I think one of the panelists earlier spoke about it, the important piece of like having your own practice is you have to understand how to run a business. And so I wanted to learn more about that. So I took that year off, studied for the LSAT, and then started law school. There's a lot of different pathways to law. And so I always encourage people to, whether it's starting here or speaking to other people. I know in this like world of social media and like short attention spans that people want to know like, what are the steps? What are the steps? And what you're going to learn is like literally everybody's steps are different. And so your steps are going to be different and it's fine. And to embrace that.
Thank you. And we'll pass it over to Phil.
Sorry. Like Nyanza, although I live a blessed life, I really live a life of oblivion. I never knew I was going to go to law school, although I always had an interest in public affairs and world affairs. by various reasons, including certain disability. I just never liked reading, and I went to engineering because of that. I can deal with numbers, I just could not deal with letters and words. And so I became a double major engineer, had a very successful career. So it happened that in my 7th year at Boeing, 7 years as an engineer, but was a 1 year, first year at Boeing, and 1.5 years. Then they changed the policy to pay for law school, and I happened to have taken LSAT 6 months before that for fun with my friend who was going to UVA and did go to UVA, and I just took it for fun with him. And I'm an engineer, and then so when the policy changed, we pay for law school, I said, "Wow, I'm gonna go." And I had no idea I was going to become a lawyer because I just want to do it for fun. And after 1 semester, I just thought, wow, I really can combine the two. And I liked it. I would like it. So that's how it all happened. After 4 years of law school, and so in a very oblivious way, I became a lawyer. And so not by design, I had 7 years of gap year. And I think it's always good to have some experience between law school and undergrad. Not that it's a must, but I think it's good.
Thank you both. On to Yvonne.
So I always wanted to be a lawyer since I was a kid. I wanted to be the president, and then I would read biographies on the presidents, and they were all attorneys. So most, not all, but most attorneys. I didn't pick up on they're all like white dudes, but that didn't stop me. So I was like, I'm gonna, most of them were lawyers, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then just like, my parents are immigrants from Mexico, and they don't speak Spanish. Like they would always be like, oh, like let's call a lawyer, and they would call me over, like, Yvonne, like, tell my employer, like, I need the day off, or tell them like it's time for a raise. And there I go, like little like mocosa, like 12-year-old, being like, my dad said he needs my money. And I enjoyed it and I loved it. And then so after law school, I wanted to do other law or like some sort of policy work. And I'm so happy that I decided to go with law school, because it's a degree that you can really do a lot of things, including policy work and practice. So I'm glad I chose that route. After college, I did a year of postgraduate service through the Episcopalian Volunteer Corps, and it was a very hard year, but it was like so much fun. I highly recommend postgrad service, either through like the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, Jesuit Volunteer Corps. There's a lot of really good programs that just support you for that whole year, and you get a lot of really great experience. And during that time, I was taking studying for the LSAT, not doing well. So then I took another year to work and keep on taking. I was test masters, and I remember for the LSAT, took that darn thing like 3 times, and I got in. I got into law school, and it was a struggle, and my GPA wasn't that great. I had like either 3.6, 3.4. I'm not really sure, and my LSAT score was also not the best, but I was like, well, this is the only path I ever saw myself taking. So like one way or another, I'm gonna figure this out. And here I am. I figured it out.
And we have a question in the chat for the panelists. How did each panelist tackle studying and preparing for the LSAT? I know that was a little while ago, but if you remember anything, I'd love to hear.
Jamila, you do not need to say that it was a long time ago, okay? We know that. I will mention, and I mentioned this in the previous breakout room, but it's important to be reminded of. It's about preparation for the LSAT. The LSAT tests you on a specific type of task and specific type of games. I actually used to teach LSAT prep for several years. And so one is about getting over the hurdle of understanding what the test tests. You have to play the game, you have to understand the game, and you have to be prepared for the game, and you have to do the work to get prepared. The other piece of it is that it's psychological. It's about your confidence. It's about getting prepared in a way that you remove some of the pressures of like, oh my God, this is like, if I don't do well, my life is over. Your life is not going to be over. You can just take it again, huh, Yvonne? And or, you know, but if you are prepared and you do the work and you go into it with a very confident and positive attitude, you're going to do well on it. But you have to take the time and do the work. And so that's always my advice for prepping for it. But again, don't get so caught up in that, you know, it has to be a certain number, it has to be a certain thing. I think in one of the other questions that we'll talk about is that, you know, there's other factors that go into your application. Obviously, you want to do well on everything, but don't make it such an end all be all that you're psychologically, you know, making it harder than it is.
So I still to this day will say that the LSAT was the hardest part of my legal experience, harder than the bar for me. And I think it's because the psychological aspect for sure, right? Like I mentioned, I was very aware that it was, you know, the way I see it, it is like I'm competing against people that have way more resources than I do, and that have like access to private tutors, and you know that have been trained to take tests, you know, for a long time. And it's such a barrier. And I saw so many people, so many of my friends that were very interested in law school, like that's where it stopped them. And that's, I think, accept it and processing it, and then, you know, and pushing forward anyway. You know, you have to do it. There's going to be a lot of like not great things you're going to be doing between like the LSAT and the bar, and you just have to push through it and get it done. It really just like put your head down and get it done. You know, and yeah, I think that's my advice. It's hard. I want to recognize that, but also like do not let it stop you. Do not let it stop you. You all have done very hard things already. The fact that you're, you know, in undergrad and that you're here, like you've done hard things, you're gonna have to do more hard things, and the LSAT's just one of them. So put your head down and keep studying. And that's something I wish I would have understood a little more, because I didn't. I think I thought I was studying because I was thinking so much about it, and really I should have spent all that energy just like putting my head down and practicing and accepting that the increases were going to be incredibly incremental and small and hard fought, but that was just going to be my reality. And I just wish I didn't fight it as much.
And now, just as advice, there are, you know, a lot of LSAT prep courses, but there are also very affordable LSAT prep courses. LA City College has an LSAT prep course. I think it's probably just a couple $100. There's free resources online. Thanks God for Google and internet. And so take advantage of any other resources you can. Again, to Yvonne's point, it's about preparation, and then more preparation to understand the test. Rather than thinking about, well, this is what I need to do to law school. It's like, no, I need to do this to get past the test.
And we have another question in the chat. A student is wondering if you all have any advice about taking a gap year, and then also just general suggestions about job opportunities or internships that they should be looking at while they pursue this gap year.
My advice is that if you have an interest in a certain practice area, to reach out to folks and network with folks in that area. I did not do a volunteer program, but I think what Yvonne did is not only commendable, but there are so many AmeriCorps opportunities and things like that you can do to kind of get yourself out in the world and get some world experience. And so, you know, again, there's lots of opportunities. It's just a matter of what direction that you want to go. And I think especially during the gap year, but also in any time during undergrad, during law school, et cetera, that you're volunteering or you're interning or et cetera, to get experience to either confirm what you want to do, learn about what you want to do, or confirm what you don't want to do is important. All of that experience will give you insight on the direction that, you know, you may ultimately land.
And I echo what you said. Couple of things is that just because you work for a law firm and your boss is a just course certified ASS, and you fill in the blank, does not mean that practice area is bad. It's just the person you work for is lousy. So just you want to kind of separate the two. Because what you want to do is to see what area you really more gravitated towards. Now, the best is that if you have some mentor, people you like to work with, and that'd be great. And ultimately, I think when you choose a certain related area or things that would build your resume for admission, you're gonna meet some people. Because if you remain positive and 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 um and inquisitive, you're going to meet some good people because the good energy goes out there, it's going to come back. And inevitably, my experience has been not just personal, but all the other students I mentor and I'm old, it's been probably over a few hundred students. They all have similar experiences. So it's the good energy out there. You have some good energy back. And you know what? Don't be afraid to ask questions like some of you have done in the thread. I mean, you like Yvonne said, and I'm gonna paraphrase and put in a way that when I mentor students, like you have as much right to be here as they do. You have achieved a lot already, more than other people. So don't belittle yourself, don't undersell yourself. You have a right to be there, especially being women or people of color. And when you interview a job, you interview them as much as they interview you. You got to design some questions that make them go after you. You got to design some questions that let them know that you're worth it and you have a certain path. And so, and if your parents wanted you to get married to, tomorrow, you're not gonna marry to the first guy or woman you see tomorrow, right? So you interview them as much as they interview you, even though it's a job for gap year, because that can really make a difference. And for God's sake, you don't need the money that much for the 1, 2 years, 3 years. It's not going to make that much of a difference. You want to be really happy and you want to be somewhere that you feel the good energy with the people.
I see we have another question in the chat. Just following up on LSAT prep. Do you have any tips on how to prepare? I know Ms. Shaw mentioned that LA City College has an LSAT program course, but if there are any other tips you guys might have.
Yeah, again, I would definitely take a prep course. And there are some that are paid, there are some that are free, they're free online resources, etc. So, and then someone mentioned in the chat that there were some free resources at local libraries. So get all the resources that you can and practice, 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 and understand what the test is looking for. And then put aside your anxieties and pressures, etc., to the extent you can, and just lean into it.
And one thing I want to make a note is that try to, if you have a mentor from recent graduates, people who just took the LSAT in the last few years, here's why. They can share with a lot of the pitfalls, which have done that. My nephew did very well on the prep. Guess what? On the real exam, he drank too much coffee, which is diuretic. So he wasted about 20 minutes distracted and finally had to go. And then looking for a bathroom at USC campus. And so it was a disaster. And of course, it really, it shows on the LSAT. And he did not get a scholarship from a big school because of that. Although the dean of admissions, who's a friend of mine, later found out and said, "Why did you not tell me that?" And anyways, so that's number one. Number two, find out the current exams, because they kept changing all the time, and they also have test to I forget what is test exams. So every person who takes the exam, some sections do not count. So you kind of know the current format because they kept changing it all the time. So while we practice the past exam, my nephew would again, I'm keep bringing up because my experience was 29 years ago, and I didn't prep. I just took it for fun, not knowing I was going to go to law school, and so I cannot use mine. But my nephew did all the prep exam he could find online, free and purchase. But the problem, knowing that a lot of them, they were not the current format. So you got to really be mindful of that too.
Like for me, it was I wish I would have you know, and they people tell you this, and it's like, I don't know why you just didn't do it every Saturday morning, right? Like the same time, take a practice test, review it, so you're mentally like prepared, and that when you're in that setting, it's not as scary. And then again, just do the work, just sit down and figure it out and do it over and over and over again. Like ideally, when you take the LSAT, you're like, I did everything I could do. I didn't feel that way. I felt that way for the bar, but not for the LSAT. And then another thing, and there was so the game section is about to be, they're going to remove it, I think, right August of next year. So you all have the option of taking it with the game or without the game. So something to think about. You know, you have that option. So be very strategic. Phil talked about this really well at the last session. Like, it's a game. You got to play this game right. Like, what's going to be best for you, and use everything you have. You know, but if you need to focus on one area, like focus on one area. Like, it's just a matter of figuring out this game and the test and how to beat it, right? But a lot of that is just, you got to do the work, and it sucks, and you just have to do it anyway.
Which is going to be your motto and mantra throughout your law school career, bar prep, and practice. So you start now. Jamila, I do want to address this question that's come up twice about whether, if you're not sure about your practice area, if you should still kind of pursue things. To me, there's a distinction between, do you want to be a lawyer versus what type of law do you want to practice? So if you want to go to law school, go to law school. You're going to figure out in that process and volunteering and doing all those things, what direction you want to go in. And maybe you have an idea. And like I mentioned later, maybe it changes or whatever, and that's fine. That's different than saying, I'm not sure if I want to be a lawyer at all. Let me tell you something. Law school is not easy, and I love law school. I'm like Phil. I love law school as I got into it, but it's not easy. It's very challenging, and it's expensive, even in getting all the resources to get financial help, etc. I am a person, when I talk to people, I discourage them from going, one, just to get JD. Don't do it. Not worth it, just to be like, hey, I got my JD. And two, if you aren't sure about wanting to actually practice law, I don't care what area you want to go into, or if you want to do something else with your JD, but just to do it is not what you want law school to do. Like, do that, like go take a walk, or like go take a ceramics class just to do it. Don't go to law school for that. And so I think that there is the opportunity during the law school process to determine which direction you want to go. If you already have the desire to practice, or you want to go to law school because there's something else that you want to do that you feel like the JD is going to give you value in, to pivot into something else. And I do think the most valuable part of getting a law degree is that it can be an asset in so many other ways. So you can, there's a lot of folks involved in this program that are in city government. There's a lot of folks I know on the corporate side that are COOs, CEOs, et cetera, that are lawyers. So there's a lot of other things that you can do. But again, if you're thinking about law school, I wouldn't look at it as just like, oh, I'm just going to go just to do it, just to do it. And you can develop the interest area or the practice area as you go, and that might change. I know a lot of people, like I said, I kind of knew what I wanted to do from an early age. I knew what type of law I wanted to do from an early age. And I am blessed that I've now been doing that 26, 7 years, and was able to kind of create a niche and a career in the area of entertainment and business law that I wanted to be in. But I have a lot of friends who did something else and like that, and then either pivoted during law school, had an idea that they wanted to do one thing and learned about something else and went into that area. And I have a lot of friends who started practicing in one area and then shifted into another area. And I think that that's even more possible than in the past. I think even when I got out of school, it was this idea of like, okay, well, if you go into firm life, you can never get out. And you're just stuck. And and you can't ever shift or pivot or change. But I think there are more opportunities to do that now. And so I encourage you, to explore those things and be able to do what you really want to do. And I know Bill might talk about this idea, this old idea also that that all lawyers are like depressed and unhappy and hate their jobs. You guys lucked out because you were 3 lawyers that actually all love their jobs. So, and we all do 3 different things. And so that it's possible if you're thinking about, how you want to approach your career. And it is possible in making sure that even in the different demanding roles that we're all in, that we are also, not only happy with our work, but have balance in our lives and are doing other things and don't feel like my whole life is not just being a lawyer. So it's thinking about all of those things as you're plotting your course for the direction that you want to go and being open that course may change.
And
Yeah,
the same, oh, sorry, go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say, because I went to evening class, I think many people in my class went to law school knowing they're not going to practice as a lawyer. I have one who was, I guess, mid-level manager at Chevron, wanting the JD to help his career as an engineer. I think I have one who was doing a joint MBA JD program and knowing he's not going to be a lawyer. So there are non-law career, if you will, that would really be helped and further and open up because of a law degree. So think about that. But now you got to really consider what is worth the time, the commitment, and the money for it. Okay, and if you're using that as a support or a resume builder for your main career, there might be other law schools that would require less energy. It might not be money. I know some who did online. Now, because if you don't care if you're going to pass the bar or not, you just want to get a JD, then some program online would serve your need, because you really don't need to pass the bar, or your employer does not care. Okay, but just be careful with that, because if there's a chance that you would need to practice as a lawyer you want to do, you might want to go to an ABA accredited law school, because they really have a much higher bar passage rate. And as to the first question, and I think Nyanza is really right on those 2 different questions about the area you practice, not knowing what area you want to practice going to law school. I don't think that is that important a question to go into law school, because you will find out. And many of us thinking we're going to do a certain thing, we don't end up doing another practice.
I think on the point of, don't go to law school if you're not sure you want to, like, what you want to do or have an idea. Like, don't get your master's for that same reason, right? Like, I think make sure, so it's like, master's or law or JD, which is what I was thinking, because like I don't know what not sure what I want to do. Like I'll just keep going to school. Like that's easy and incredibly expensive and a dumb thing to do if you don't have a plan or have an idea or have like something in mind. And I know, so I was thinking about getting like my MBA and my JD, and I was talking to the professor. He's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, like I want to maybe do policy work, but I want to like do workers' rights, and or maybe get a master's or something else." Like, "Well, don't do that. Like, why? Like, you're not going to need it, and it's just going to be more debt." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's true." So I think it's like an idea of like figuring out at least an idea of what you want to do, a sector, nonprofit, private, like, and then checking out exactly what the needs are for those positions. And very rarely I see a job that require a JD and something else, unless public health maybe, I think is one that I see a lot. But I'm I think that the JD is a great degree. It's very versatile. It honestly, it comes with like a status, like it does when people see a JD or that you're an attorney, like that's very much a reality. And honestly, that's something that I like about this, having a JD and being an attorney. So I'm a big proponent of getting a JD. I think it's a great entryway to like the middle class, at least for somebody like me. I was like, this is a great, like it gives me foundation and options and so many possibilities. And so I think I don't think a lot of people think about it that way, but I did, because I always wanted to do government or nonprofit. And after law school, I was a legal organizer. I wasn't I wasn't working in an attorney position. I converted it into one later, but I knew I wanted to do workers' rights. I knew a JD would help me in one way or another, and it has. And the debt is something to think about. So you don't want to take out more money than you think you're going to be making. I think it's kind of a good general rule of thumb. But I went into not knowing profit and knowing the public service loan forgiveness program was out there, and I have had my loans forgiven now, just this last year. So a lot of factors. It's hard to say like yes or no, this is a good idea without really thinking about overall like your specific situation and your goals. I think it's a matter of like sitting down, figuring those two things out and finding out what's best for you.
Yeah, I think what we're all saying is that if you feel like it can be a value add and it's something that you want to do, then do it. What I'm saying is that you're just doing it just to do it. It's separate from them saying, hey, I want to do this because it's going to help me in an executive career. I want to do this because I want to be some sort of lawyer. I want to do this because it's going to be a value add to some goal I have. Then you're also looking at all those other factors. But I think just, on the ground foundational level, of thinking about it in that way, in terms of what me, Phil, and Yvonne are saying. I thought I saw somebody's hand up.
Did someone raise their hand? I don't see a hand right now.
Okay. Oh, I saw some emojis.
But if you do have a question, feel free to raise it again and we will call on you. If there are also any other questions, feel free to add them to the chat. And for our panelists, I would say, do you have any advice for participants that are thinking about enrolling in law school, and just also advice that you would give to yourself before enrolling in law school? We know that law school can be incredibly difficult and hard. So just any tips you have in terms of just maintaining your mental health and your social life and all things like that.
I think one of the things, and I didn't mention this in an earlier session, but I just thought about it. I guess you phrased that question differently, Jamila. I thought about it is that do the research like Phil was saying about the different schools, right? There's a lot of different schools. I went to school a long time ago, believe it or not. And so there weren't a lot of schools that had specifically like entertainment law type programs when I was in school. Like I was able to take like entertainment law class and negotiation class, like one or two other classes. But if there is an area that you're interested in and in law school that offers a program in that, those are the things that you can look at to say, oh, I know there's like a amazing public interest program at UCLA Law, or there's a maybe there's something related to IP law that you're interested in at a different school. Think about if you do know, or have an interest in a specific area, in researching the schools and really thinking about which school may be best for you rather than, again, I know back in the day, I was like, hey, these are the law school rankings and you want to go to these big schools. You're not getting into those big schools, and or it's not possible financially or for whatever reason. Really think about the school that you want to choose and the schools that you want to apply to based on your interests, and do that research. And somebody mentioned earlier about getting fee waivers for applications. So again, if you're applying for, multiple amount of schools, my personal opinion, again, is kind of narrowing it down because it's very time consuming to do that, even though they have the LSAC like big application, you're also writing essays and everything for everybody. If you do that pre-research, then you're not kind of just like applying to schools, right? It's like, hey, these are the 5 or 6 or maybe 6 to 8 schools that I really would like to go to, that offer something that I'm interested in, or maybe have, some other support or factor, whether it's how diverse it is, whether location, et cetera, to do that research, and thinking about the schools that you even want to apply to that you'd be willing to attend.
And I do see that we have a new question in the chat. I want to let the panelists know we have about 3 minutes, so whoever wants to take a stab at it, feel free. The question is, how was the work-life balance for you during law school and now after having gone to school?
So I went to full-time at Southwestern during the day, so my experience is based on that. And I had more of a social life than I should have, but it is what it is. And I didn't have kids, and so it's like a lot of things, like there's different factors. So in law school, I didn't really see it as a problem. Like I just went to school and, and that's it, which is a great luxury. After practicing, there's I think it's one thing I wish I would have accepted or realized early on. It's like every job is different. You're going to have multiple jobs, most likely. You can leave a job, if you don't like it, or a job might be a perfect fit for you at one phase in your life and not for another, right? So like out of law school, you don't have any kids, you want to go to big law and like grind and make good money, which is like, again, no shame in that, like do your thing. That might work for you then. And then later on, you might have kids, right? I had kids, and financially, I couldn't stay at a nonprofit. So I went to government and was very 9 to 5. Also, it was a union employer, right? And that is a big deal. I work remote full-time, we're unionized workforce. I pick up my kids, I go to soccer. I'm missing soccer today, which I'm not mad about. So thank you guys for letting me skip it. And it's just, it's a matter of like where you are in your life. And if you have a partner, make sure you have a supportive partner, because sometimes you have to support their, I went to state with my job. My husband's job was, he was like growing it and expanding it and focusing on him. I provided stability. And now it's like, it's my turn. I want to go where I love my job and where I can help people and where I have balance. So you'll find it. But I love that it's coming from, I feel like it so often comes from women thinking about it. And your generation is just killing it and pushing the boundaries on work-life balance. And I am here for it. And thank you all for really, we talk about it. I feel like my generation talks about it and your generation is doing it. So mad props to you all. And thank you for letting us piggyback off everything you all are doing.
I know, I was going to say, like, when there was no concept of like work-life balance. It's like, you're a lawyer and that's all you do. Like, there is no other life. What are you talking about? When I got out of law school. So I've had to embrace that more. And I do admire that, most students and definitely lawyers now think about it more. Even more employers are thinking about it and understand. Obviously, we've all come through a pandemic now, so we're all dealing with different ways of what that work-life balance is. And so I think it's just a matter of figuring out what is best for you to take care of yourself and also strive in your profession. And it's absolutely possible.
Amazing. And I do believe that we've hit time. So just want to thank all of the panelists for your amazing insight. This has been a great conversation. And thank you to all of those in the audience that have participated and asked questions. We really appreciate it. I believe we're going to get ready to head back to the main session. They'll close the breakout rooms and you'll be able to swap into a different session. So once again, thank you all. We really
Thank you,
appreciate
everybody,
being
for
here.
attending and for your questions. We appreciate it.
And I guess while we wait, if you can answer one more question, if the panelists are all right with that. I see that a participant asked if anyone knew any single parents while they were in law school. If you could describe, I guess, what their experience was in law school, or at least from what you were able to see.
Yeah, I have friends who were single parents then, and I have mentees that went back to school that have kids. And again, it's just being intentional about how you're balancing your time and how you're prioritizing and having a good support system, from what I understand, and making sure that you have folks around you and support you in the process. And then there's options, right? Because there's day programs, there's evening programs, there's other ways that you can still pursue what you want to do and go to law school in different forms and functions. So I definitely wouldn't let that hold you back either.
And from what I saw, the most focused people in law school were the parents. They didn't have time to mess around. They got it done and they were efficient. So do it.
One thing I want to echo what Yvonne said was that the support system is very important, whether it's your spouse, your family, what. Otherwise, it might not work. Or put it this way, it would work a lot better if you have a good support system. And if you have a spouse, make sure your significant other or the spouse are in full support. In my evening school, we have seen several divorces. But also,
Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it another minute for folks to trickle in. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. We have a great panel coming for y'all, so I hope you enjoy it.
And Nyanza and Phil, it's so nice to have this space with you, and thank you for sharing. And I'm leaving just as inspired, I feel like, as a student, hearing from you all, and Lynette was amazing in the beginning. So nice to share space with you.
Alrighty, and I guess we will get started. So for everyone, this is breakout room number 1, how I made it, journeys to and from law school. My name is Jamila, and I will be the staff assistant / facilitator for this room. Before we get started and dive into our conversation, I do want to go over some general housekeeping. So first and foremost, each of our speakers are going to present briefly, and then we'll open up the conversation. So please feel free to ask questions and engage. This is a space for y'all to really interact and to ask any questions you have about law school. When we open up the conversation, I do ask, if you have any questions, if you want to come off mute, to raise your hand or to ask in the chat. I promise we will get to your question. And again, this is a conversation, so please feel free to turn on your camera and to really engage. And when you're not speaking, I do ask that you stay on mute just so that we can all hear the dialogue. And for our panelists, I will use a clock emoji to indicate when there is 5 minutes left. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce our breakout room speakers today. First up, we have Nyanza Shaw, Executive Vice President, Scripted Business and Legal. Sorry, my Zoom's frozen. Okay, and Legal Affairs for FremantleMedia in North America. Nyanza Shaw is a renowned film, television, music, and media lawyer with over 25 years of experience. She currently serves as Executive Vice President, Scripted Business and Legal Affairs for Fremantle, North America. In this role, Nyanza oversees all deal-making pertaining to the development, production, and financing of Fremantle scripted series and new media content produced for the U.S. She received her BA from Mills College in Oakland, California, and her JD from UC Hastings College of Law in San Francisco, California. Our next speaker is Deputy City Attorney Phil Lamb. Phil Lamb serves as the first intellectual property counsel for the city of Los Angeles and founding the first governmental intellectual property IP law practice in North America. He developed the city's IP asset management program and IP licensing practice. Phil graduated with honors from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles Evening Program, and with distinctions from the University of Illinois, Masters of Science, and a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering. Before becoming an attorney, he was an engineering manager at a Fortune 100 company in the energy and aviation industry. And finally, we have Yvonne Medrano. She is an attorney with Tzedek Legal Services Employment Rights Project. She currently represents low-wage and immigrant workers. Her practice currently focuses on wage theft, discrimination, and retaliation. Yvonne also engages in policy work that has resulted in improved working conditions for all Angelenos. She graduated from Loyola Marymount in 2007 and from Southwestern Law School in 2012. And to help kick off our conversation, the first question for our panelists is, can you explain what your path to law school looked like, if you took any time off, if there were any notable internships you did before getting to law school or while you were in law school? And I will pass it off to Nyanza Shaw.
Hi, everybody. So I knew I wanted to go to law school from when I was about 9 years old. And so I was pretty intentional about getting information and looking into resources. And then when I graduated from college, I actually did take a year off and I worked at a big, huge law firm in San Francisco. I was a legal secretary or legal assistant. At the time she was legal secretary. They don't call them that anymore. She was executive legal assistant. And so it was a wonderful experience for me to understand how law firms run and different things that lawyers did and the different practice areas. Like I knew what I wanted to do, but I also had an idea that I wanted to have my own practice at some point. And so learning about both was really cool for that year. And I did have my own practice for about 20 years prior to going in-house at Fremantle. So it was also very helpful. And I think it's just a great opportunity if you can. And I'm a big supporter of kind of like non-traditional students, where you're coming from a different area and pivoting from a different career, like Lynette spoke about earlier. I know Capri Maddox is also in that kind of category where you don't have to go straight through. And so that's what I did for that year. And then I went to law school and, definitely took advantage of a lot of volunteer opportunities, internships, et cetera, related to entertainment and business, which is what I knew I wanted to get into while I was in school.
Thank you. And Phil, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I have kind of unconventional way, although I was interested in world affairs. For certain reason, I gone to engineering science where I did not have to read. And then, I live a very blessed but oblivious life. I still do. It is a blessed life. And I happen to have taken the LSAT with an engineer friend of mine. And then about 9 months later, my employer, Boeing Company, changed the policy and we pay for law school 100%. And so I went to evening school for 4 years. Still did not think I was going to be a lawyer. I just did it for fun. And after one semester, I thought, okay, I would make a career change. This is going to be more fun, combining the two. And so that's how all happened. So I think that there's a lot to say, not about living in a oblivious life, but I'd rather you plan to the extent you can. But there's a lot to say about having a gap year or some work experience in between undergrad and law school or even graduate school, because it does show you, it does give you a chance to sample what you really want in life. And then also it helps you to build the resume for for grad school admission. In this case, law school. And then in your gap year employment, which hopefully will be related to the law, then you can even further explore different areas of the law or practice and so forth. And it might not be something you like. Okay, so I think it's important to have that. And law schools do like that, and employers do like that. And law professors love teaching evening students because they think we have some life experience to bring into the classroom and make their job a lot more interesting. So.
Thank you, and Yvonne.
So I always wanted to be a lawyer since I was a kid. Like it's the one career I always it wasn't even a dream. I was like, that's just what I'm going to do. And I decided, and I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did. So I went to undergrad, and then after that, I did a postgraduate service program. So it's a 1-year service program. There are some great 2-year service programs. So there's, people know about the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, and there's other groups that are connected to like certain churches. So I did the Episcopalian Volunteer Corps, which was great. I'm not Episcopalian. I don't think there's any requirement that you be any denomination for any of these programs, but I loved it because it was almost like a year of like being out in the world, but with like some layer of protection. So like they took care of like some housing insurance, and they gave you like a stipend of like $300 a month, which then I was like, this is totally enough money for me to live off of. And it was, you make it work. But it was such a great year because I learned so much, and I realized how much I needed to grow before going to law school. So I'm very thankful for that year. Highly encourage it, especially if you want to live in another city, and you work, right? So I lived in Harlem, and then I worked at Planned Parenthood, and just like really grew up a lot and had great mentors. And they weren't legal mentors, even though I wanted to be an attorney. It was just mentors that helped me like again, like just like grow up and like realize, what's out there in the world and how to manage myself. And so highly, highly recommend it. My plan was to study for the LSAT during that time, and I did, but I was really struggling with the LSAT. So I took another year and worked at UCLA as a research. I was researching health issues for minors, but it was really just a year to buy me some time to keep studying for the LSAT. And I'm glad I did that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And next question, what has your career path been after law school, and is it what you expected? Did you make any pivots, or have to take any time to do other things besides law school?
I can take this one. So after law school, I was a legal organizer with the Clean Car Wash campaign, which is now the Clean Car Wash Worker Center. It was a non-attorney position, which people, thought I shouldn't take, but took it. And also because like I wasn't sure if I was going to pass the bar, right? So I was like, well, this is great because they can't fire me after. And it was a job, and it paid well. And it was paying as much as like a nonprofit attorney position was paying at other nonprofits. So I was like, this is great. Like I get to like breathe a little bit and organize and learn. So glad I did it. Converted it into an attorney position. Loved it. Then got married, had kids, needed to pay for a daycare, which is very expensive. So I went to the state, the Department of Industrial Relations, which I always thought I wanted to end up in government. Not that job particularly, but it was great because I got to like raise my kids and be home by like 6 and hang out with them. But eventually I was like, I don't want to do this at all. And I actually forgot to, I always forget, I went to the Department of Social Services for 2 or 3 months and I hated it. And I never in my life thought I would like leave a job after 2 months. I was like, I would never. I did because it was not a bad job for most people, but it was just not what I wanted to do. And I didn't work this hard to do something I don't feel like doing. So then I went to Tzedek Legal Services, which really is my dream job. Maybe not my dream salary, but it balances out. It's great. I love it. This is exactly what I thought I would be doing with my law degree. And I get to explore policy work. We do a lot of policy and community building and community lawyering. And I don't have to write briefs too much, so that's also great.
Yeah, I can say it has been a blessing because I do exactly what I've always wanted to do. And I really love it. And even with the challenges and all of those things, like I said, I had an inkling about definitely being in entertainment and business and wanting to have my own practice. And that's what I did for about 20 something years. And then going in-house was just a matter of not much of a pivot, but more of a pivot relative to how I wanted to use my experiences and my knowledge in a different way to impact an organization because I'd had my own practice for so long. So, but it's all been in line with what I desired and what I hoped I'd be doing. Now, given that, when you talk to other people, you will find that there's a lot of folks like Yvonne and I who knew, and there's a lot of people who didn't know. And so everybody has their own kind of steps, course, et cetera, that they take. Yvonne, I'm glad that you brought that up. I remember being at a panel for Women Lawyers of LA. And there was a young lawyer, and she had been at a firm for 2 years and was not liking it and was very apprehensive about changing because she was like, I don't want it to be on my resume that I've only been here 2 years and I had not been at a firm long enough. One, in terms of work-life balance has come up today. You have to do what's best for you. If something just is not a good fit, you make a change and you can always explain that. And I also appreciate that a lot of young folks now know that and will put certain priorities on like, hey, I want to do something that really makes me happy. Hopefully makes me great money, but even good money and being happy is better than like great money and being unhappy, believe it or not. And so thinking about that in terms of your path, whether it's how you get to law school, what you decide to do in law school, and what you decide to do afterwards. The good thing is that you do have choices, and everybody has a different path or course, and there's no right way or wrong way or specific steps to get you where you want to ultimately be.
Bill, do you have something to add?
Me?
Mhm.
Okay. I think the couple of things. One is that you get don't go to higher education or grad school just because you don't know what else next. That would not be the right decision, and you may regret it. Especially after like $400,000 student loan or $600,000 student loan. And so you got to go knowing what you want to do in terms of direction. You might not know what kind of law you want to practice, but you really want to have a passion in that profession, because the practice of law is a noble profession. You'll be put in once you pass the bar, you'll be put in a position of power in a sense. Power, not in the sense that you want to have power to rule people, be a dictator or that, but you'll be in a position to effectuate a lot of changes and make impact on people that you don't even know you're making impact on. So, and everything you say and do would leave a mark and impact on people. And I mean, I give you an example. I have a judge friend whom I have not seen for about 10, 15 years. And then I knew he became a judge, and it was like, oh my God, I became a judge because of Phil. I was like, what are you talking about? was because when he was a public defender, when I was a prosecutor, I won a case over him that he thought I won because I worked harder than he did. And then so unknowingly, that was the lesson. That was the thing, I impact on people. So everything we impact. So gotta be really careful when you go into this profession. It's worth your time, worth the money, worth your commitment. So that's number one. And number two, really, I cannot reemphasize more than enough. You gotta be happy and healthy. There's no money in the world that's worth your health and happiness. If you're not happy, look for something else. Let's suppose that you graduate from law school. You're in the law. You really, really practice different kind of law. You're really just not happy because of the practice of law, not because of other things, but because of practice of law. Then it's time to pivot. And the law degree is always a good training. They allow you to do other things also. So you probably would not lose in that sense, but you probably don't want to have to go through the winding road to get to somewhere you would end up being happy. So those are the biggest takeaway at a high level.
Thank you for sharing. And I know you mentioned that a JD, a law degree, opens opportunities. How would you say your professional career has been impacted by receiving a law degree, and how has it opened doors for you?
If I just take this one first, I was an evening student for 4 years. Many of my classmates, well, I don't say many, but a handful of my classmates knew they were not going to practice law. One wanted to be in the politics, and he became an LA City Council person. One became a DA for, a mayor of Compton, of City of Bell. One just wanted to have a JD to help his career as an engineering manager at a big company. One was doing a JD MBA joint program, knowing he was not going to be practicing law. Well, we even have one who's a former Chippendale dancer who want to go to law school because he want to file his own patent. Now that was probably not the right, that was probably not the worthy reason of going. You can just hire a patent lawyer. But he did not end up practicing law. He ended up actually dropping out. And we have the widow of the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Beverly Hills Wilshire Hotel, who really didn't know what to do after the husband passed away and gone to law school. And within a week, she dropped out. And so you kind of know what you wanted to know first. And so you don't have to practice law. A JD really can open up a lot of doors. It really does. But preferably, you kind of wanted to know what you wanted to do first before you pursue going down the road. That's kind of my preface advice.
Yeah, that's definitely has been my advice. I discourage people to, from just going to law school just to go to law school. But I do think that you can go to law school, get a JD, and do something else. And if that's something that you feel like your JD is going to help you accomplish or add value to you accomplishing, then that's a great reason to go to school. Or if you want to be a lawyer, even if you don't know specifically the practice area that you want to do, then go to law school and you kind of figure out as you go along, what direction that you want to go. But yeah, it's a lot of time and a lot of money and very challenging and stressful and all of those things. That, by the way, this is coming from someone who actually liked law school. Even in liking it, it's all of those things. So just to do it to be like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to keep going to school kind of thing is, to me, not as productive. And then I actually talk to folks when they're saying, hey, I want to do X. And so I think I want to go to law school to do that. But then when you're really talking to them, they realize that they probably don't need a JD to accomplish that. And so even thinking about that type of research, talking to folks, asking folks if there's, the brilliance of LinkedIn is that you can reach out to someone and say, hey, I want to talk to you about what you do. Is there something, how did you get there? Or was this a value to you? And it might be that it's a CEO or a COO or somebody that's in a legal position. There's a lot of positions in public interest that you don't need to be a lawyer to be in, like government positions. So again, make sure that the means justify the end, as they say.
And I do see we have a hand raised. Drew, do you have a question?
Yeah, just allow me to introduce myself real quickly for some context. Yeah, my name is Drew. I am currently a third year attending UCLA, studying economics as my major, minoring in anthropology and global studies. So I guess go Bruins. I guess for me, my main question would be like, oh, considering that you guys have, both like the conventional and like the unconventional routes to get into like law school, I was wondering like, oh, if you guys have like any tips or like advice to like, make myself like, look like, oh, I do want to like, pursue this type of like field. Because I feel like looking back at like my past experiences and such, everything I've done like prior to this point is, finance related, and it's nothing like, related to like law school as a whole. So I guess I'd love to like, hear you guys' like insight on that. And also touching on the point like, oh, it's a pretty broad question. And I think like everyone's like wondering as well, like, oh, you guys are talking about knowing like what you want to do. I think like, that's such a big thing, and that plays like such an important role in your life. And here wondering like, oh, how do you know if what you're doing is actually what you want to do? I think, yeah, that's basically like, the gist of, the things that I wanted to ask.
Those are great questions, Drew. I'll answer the second one because I know Phil comes from he came from engineering and came over to law. So even though it's not traditional, he can definitely give you some tips on that. But again, we're not necessarily saying, and I made this distinction earlier, it's the difference between wanting to go to law school and a value add of what that means and what you can use it for and et cetera, versus knowing specifically what practice area you want to go into. And so if you want to be a lawyer and there's certain areas, just in general, and you understand that piece of it, I think you can still pursue it and kind of figure out what that is. And part of it is from having conversations, volunteering, all of those things, to figure out what you're really interested in. And what I actually love when folks come from different backgrounds, because you have an opportunity to go into a space in a new way where it's like, oh, I'm coming from this finance piece. And so this is a way that I have a value add that I don't have a finance background or engineering background or, and so in looking at that, I think that that's a great way to approach when you're pursuing law school, explaining the difference between where you come from and where you want to go. Even again, you don't have to specifically know what practice area, there's so many, but it's like, oh, if I'm interested in going to law school and I have this background, that's something you can talk about in essays. That's something that you can talk about that actually makes you very unique.
And I remember having that same thought in law school, and then now just being like, I always wanted to be a workers' rights advocate. And I liked it. I was always really interested in it. But I was like, well, what I really want to do, like, the world is my oyster, like as a first year law student, right? Like, what are you going to do this summer? And then I did really like, for me, it was like, well, what do I like? Like, it was very a basic question. Like, what do I like? What can I see myself doing for a while? And I was like, well, it's this. It's like, I like working with workers, like walking alongside with like worker advocates. I really got to learn about the workers' rights community in California. And I'm like, well, I just like that. So it's like, well, I should just do that. And for me, it was that easy. I don't know if it's that easy for everybody. For some people, it's like, I like the idea of having a job that pays me a lot of money. It's like, well, okay, well, cool. Like, if you like that, then, you have like some direction, but like, what do you like? What do you want? What do you need to like fulfill yourself as a human, and your job is one part of that, right? It's not everything. But yeah, for me, it was just like, what do I like? What do I want to do? What isn't painful to do in terms of law school, right? And
And believe
But
it or
it's
not, there's probably some practice area that you can go into that falls into that, right? And so, like, I knew I wanted to do transactional. I like negotiating. I like mediation. I didn't want to be in, in court. But there's other people like, hey, I watched all the Tom Cruise movies. I want to be a litigator. And if that's what you want to do, and you like doing that, then you do that. But again, I have, whether it's employment law or criminal law or family law or public interest or entertainment. I mean, to Yvonne's point, the world really is your oyster, and you can have and take that time in law school where you're learning the foundations of law to explore not only what you want to do, but more importantly, what you don't want to do, because there might be something that you say, oh, I want to take this class. Then you're sitting in the middle of class like, this is absolutely not what I want to do. And it's okay to figure that out during law school.
Yeah, I guess my career would be it was expected, but was not expected. I went to law school initially wanting to just, it's a free education. I just want to know the law. After one semester, I decided, hey, I can actually combine engineering and law. I like both of them. I love engineering. I just didn't like the fact that it was so nerdy, even though I'm nerdy. And it was not a profession, even though I was a manager, it was not so much a profession that required a lot of let's say human interaction, if you will. You can be a really, really dry person and still thrive. And so that's what the only aspect I did not like. The opposite was the law that you can find in there. And also, so what I would encourage you to do is that before you go into law and say, hey, can I leverage my undergrad education or other experiences in jobs or anything, or things I like into law? And then, because the one thing I always would tell my mentees, or follow your heart, do what you like. If you follow your heart, if you like it, you do well. If you would do well, the money will take care of itself, except modeling and acting, and fine arts. Otherwise, you will be fine financially. But the important thing is that you would do well. You would only do well if you really have a conviction and passion for it. So find something that can merge. There was one extreme case. I was mentoring this student who was the type that, remember Legally Blonde, the number one, the first one, and totally that just she reminded me of her. And it was like, why did you go to law school? I don't know. And she asked every single question. She didn't know. And I was trying to find something she really liked to merge with her career. It was too late. She was already in law school that was set up to mentor her. So I said, okay. And finally, I was like, what do you like? Well, I don't know. I like shopping. Okay, all right. Do you like clothes? All right, so there's fashion law. So finally, I found something that she can merge with her interests. So it's got to be something you like. Even in her most extreme case, I found something for her. So there are many, many people, things you would like, and merge them. Once you have the heart, the passion, you will do well, and you do well, you'll be fine. You'll be happy and healthy. And then what's not expected was that I did not expect to I did not expect to be able to do kind of corporate law in the city government, which was not it was really my second choice, if you will. I came to the city government to pick up my trial experience before going back to a big law firm to do patent litigation. So, but then that was not expected. But the thing is that a lot of things in life can be expected, unexpected. You just grab it by the horn and reinvent it yourself and make something out of it. And then find something that would serve everyone, win-win-win situation. And then people would, oh wow, I didn't know you could do that. I was coming back from DC last week. on the American IP Law Association annual dinner and annual meeting. And for the last 20 years, every time I'm at an IP conference, people, new stranger meeting was like, oh, I didn't know government has IP lawyer. What IP does it have? Well, I mean, what they did not understand was that a government, even like a city and the county, some of our top grossing departments, if it's publicly traded, top 50, Fortune 50 companies. So that's the kind of what IP do they have. So there are things you can see and see the opportunity, invent it yourself, and make. And I've been told, oh, Phil created a job for himself. And I look back, I said, I think he's right. I did create a job for myself, but that was not the intention. So you find something you like, and then you create it for yourself. That was unexpected. What's expected also was that I love public interest and public service. So this job allowed me to do that.
Thank you.
I was
And
gonna say, I think that's great advice for everybody, because there are ways that you can shift, create, bring something into where you are at. I have a great friend, George Fatherray, who was a partner at Munger Tolles years and years, and also a partner at Sidley, but he's very much into art. He's very much into real estate. He happened to then get involved in the Bruce's Beach lawsuit. And he does a lot of other things pro bono in relation to his job. And so there's also ways that you can bring what you love into what you're doing as well, and thinking about that, whether it's creating a role, whether it's kind of shifting. When I'm talking to mentees that are, in a firm and they're doing entertainment litigation, but they want to do entertainment transactional work, I say, like, well, go to your partners and ask them if you can do a couple projects on the side, or if there's different areas that you want to be in. If you're in a firm or in a company or in an organization that does multiple things, you could take the initiative of saying, like, hey, I'd like to do this, but I also am interested in doing this. So if there's an opportunity for me to work in, not in two different areas, or if there's an opportunity for me to bring, my background and help in another area, you can take the initiative to do that.
thank you. And for another question for the panelists, what advice do you have for prospective law students and navigating the complexities of law school? We all know that law school can be difficult, time-consuming, expensive, et cetera, et cetera. So is there any advice that you have that you wish someone would have told you about law school prior to starting your first year? I know that's a longer question, so I also dropped it in the chat.
The LSAT is not pleasant, and you have to do it anyway. And I think it's okay to recognize it and accept it, and then put your head down and start doing the work. And I mean, I took the class 3 times. I think I got a 154 the first time and a 151 the second time, and cried both times, and applied anyway. And I was as ready as I thought I could be, and I just take the test, just study for it. Put your head down, put in the work, study. And I mentioned that's the hardest thing I've done throughout my legal career. And do not let that stop you. And just accept that it's not going to be fun, and do the work anyway, and practice. Do everything you can, put your head down, shut everything else out for as long as you can, whether that's like an hour a day, 3 hours on Saturday. But that's my biggest thing. And for loans, they're a big deal, right? And for me, I knew I wanted to do government or nonprofit, and I knew that the public service loan forgiveness program existed, and that's what I focused on. And I were forgiven last year, and it was a smooth process. I know there was a lot of hiccups initially because the program was fairly new, like 2017-18. I think it was the first year people were getting their loans forgiven, and there was lawsuits up the wahoo led by attorneys who were wanting to get their loans canceled. And but I think the program is running a little more smoothly now. So
Yeah, I think the question pertains to before or admitting to law school, not during law school. So I think if I were to do this all over again, I would do being an engineer methodically, like what Yvonne was saying, the key pieces that you must have, and to me the three basic factor, if you will, the LSAT score, the GPA score, which you might not be able to change. So LSAT is very important, especially when you cannot change GPA. And now after the Harvard UNC Supreme Court case in June, then the personal statement becomes important, I think. That's where you can talk about the personal adversities and then your background and so forth. Because now law schools would be fed with data that are race blind. So what you don't want is to be disadvantaged from talking about the adversities and diversities in your life that make you who you are, that make you a more worthy student than other people. So, and I'm going to spend a little time on a personal statement. They want to know who you are. They want to know why you deserve that spot. So you can be vulnerable to talk about some of the things in your life that you think has nothing to do with the law, because they want to know who you are. So you can talk about. I think one commissioner earlier was talking about how in her personal statement she was talking about her really uphill battle from coming to the country from the Philippines as an undocumented person, and then law school and so forth. And of course, like many immigrants, my family included, we had to deal with financial adversity, if you will. If nothing else, you have to kind of know the system. I mean, you got in TC a traffic accident. Guess what? Some cops not going to be. They're gonna put a fault in you, and it happens a lot in immigrant communities. So there are a lot of adversity like that. There were any examples that inspire you to to pursue law? Then you talk about that. I give you an example. Dr. Wenho Lee, who was a top scientist in the Alamo lab and was accused of being a spy. Anyways, she was acquitted. He was basically the presiding judge had to apologize to him for the treatment that he was suffering from the DOJ and so forth. Anyways, his daughter, who was just maybe happy-go-lucky, and then after the experience, she wanted to go to law school, and she talked about how the experience inspired her. So little things like that you can incorporate into your personal statement because you want to stand out. And so that's why I include personal statement as the three. Now, other than the basic, I think for LSAT, like Yvonne was talking about, and there are the tasks. I think Nyanza was talking about. There was community law school, is it right? That offer LSAT prep course at low fee. So that would be good because it improves your score. And then what I would say is that something that's not the basic, if you will, to call the admissions office of the school and see if you can find out more information. If you can even build a relationship with any officers who can continually give you some pointers, and don't be afraid of asking. And get a mentor who's gone through with this, whether it's law students or lawyers.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, when I was in law school, I actually worked in the admissions office because I was so passionate about bringing diversity to UC Hastings that I was like, I need a job. I want to go to the law school forums. I will work for you